They say kindness is its own reward. But what if the person you showed mercy to turned out to be the one who saves your life? Kwame was just a struggling mechanic. Barely surviving, barely eating. Yet one day, he shared his only meal with a homeless stranger named Joseph, while his proud neighbor stood across the street and laughed. The beggar looked weak, dusty, and forgotten by the world. Kwame didn't see a man without worth. He saw someone who needed a second chance. Without hesitation, he gave him bread, offered a spot in his tiny wooden shop to sleep, and treated him like a human being, when everyone else saw only dirt and shame. The neighbor? He mocked him. "Why waste your little food on trash?" he spat, crossing his arms in disgust. To him, helping the homeless was foolish. Pride blinded his heart. Years passed. Life went on. But no one expected that beggar returns could change Kwame's life. So stay with me, because by the end of this story, you won't believe what happened next. But until we dive into the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting life stories. The sun was unforgiving that afternoon, its heat bouncing off the dusty pavement of Coralboo Street. Kwame wiped sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt under the rusty engine of a broken-down taxi. Business had been slow for months, but he refused to close shop. As a mechanic, his hands were his lifeline, and his tiny garage at the edge of the street was the only thing standing between him and hunger. Just as he was locking up, he noticed a figure sitting by the broken gate, thin, wrapped in layers of torn clothing, with eyes that spoke of hunger and defeat. The man didn't beg. He simply sat, head bowed, hands clutched tightly around his knees. Kwame hesitated. He didn't have much, just one loaf of bread and a sachet of water he had been saving for dinner. But something tugged at his chest. "Hey, you hungry?" he asked. The man lifted his head slowly, his voice raspy. "Yes, sir. But I'll be fine." Kwame shook his head. "Here," he said, tearing the loaf in two. He handed one half and the water to the man, who accepted it with trembling hands. "Thank you. God bless you," the man whispered. "Rest by the side," Kwame said. "If you need to sleep here tonight, I'll be around." From across the street, Adjei, Kwame's neighbor, scoffed loudly. He was a flashy man with a loud mouth, always boasting about his connections and imported wines. He strolled over with a grin plastered across his face. "Kwame the Samaritan. Feeding stray dogs now." Adjei mocked. Kwame ignored him. "That man's a waste. You help one beggar today, 10 more will line up at your door. Just like your engine parts, useless." Kwame felt the sting but didn't respond. He had nothing to prove. That night, the homeless man slept on a mat inside the garage. Kwame gave him an old shirt and blanket. "My name is Kwame," he said before lying down. "Yours?" The man paused. "Call me Joseph." From that day on, Joseph stayed close. He cleaned the garage, fetched water, and even tried to help with repairs despite his frail frame. Though his past remained a mystery, his gratitude was sincere. But the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder. Adjei sneered at every opportunity. "Maybe Joseph will fix your life too, he would joke. Kwame didn't mind. He knew what it meant to be in need. What he didn't know was that this simple act of kindness, giving a stranger half a loaf of bread, would change the entire course of his life. And Joseph, the beggar at the gate, had a secret he wasn't ready to reveal. Over the weeks, Joseph became more than just a stranger Kwame helped. He became a quiet shadow, a steady hand, and sometimes even a friend. Every morning, before Kwame opened the garage, Joseph had already swept the floor and boiled water for tea with the little they could afford. Joseph never asked for money. When Kwame tried to give him some, he always refused. "You've done enough," he'd say. One afternoon, Kwame sat on an overturned engine block, shirt drenched in sweat. "You ever fix a car before?" he asked Joseph. Joseph shook his head. "No. But I watch you. I learn." Kwame smiled. "Good. One day, I'll teach you." They were brothers now, bound not by blood but by struggle. But their small world was not free of thorns. Adjei never missed a chance to remind the neighborhood that Kwame was wasting his time. "Look at that fool," he'd say to passersby. "Helping a nobody instead of finding real customers. No wonder he's still poor." His words found ears, and soon, many began to avoid Kwame's garage. Rumors spread. That he had gone mad. That the beggar was a curse. Business dropped. Some days, no cars came at all. At night, Kwame would lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling of the garage. Doubt crept in. Had he made a mistake? But every morning, Joseph would rise before him, sweeping, praying quietly in a corner, and bringing a sense of calm that Kwame couldn't explain. One evening, as they sat under a flickering streetlight eating roasted plantain and groundnuts, Joseph finally spoke about his past. "I used to be somebody," he said. Kwame glanced at him, surprised. "I had a business. A wife. Even a house in East Legon. Then, betrayal. Partners ran off with everything. My wife left. Depression came next. I lost it all." Kwame listened silently. "I was ashamed. I wandered. Until I sat at your gate that day." Kwame sighed. "Life can break anybody, Joseph. You don't owe me your past." Joseph nodded. "But I owe you my future." And though neither of them knew what tomorrow held, something shifted that night. From the window above, Adjei watched them, sipping wine from a crystal glass. "Two fools," he muttered, "wasting time on dreams." But even as he mocked, cracks were forming in his own world. And across town, someone important had just come across an old contact file with the name Joseph Ankoma highlighted in bold. Fate had begun its silent turn. It was a quiet Tuesday when the past finally came knocking. Joseph had gone to the market to buy some bolts for Kwame's latest repair job when a sleek black SUV pulled up beside him. At first, he ignored it. He was used to being invisible. But when the tinted window rolled down and a voice called, "Joseph." Joseph Ankoma, he froze. No one had called him that name in years. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of a well-dressed man in a navy suit. It took him a second, then his breath caught. "Ya." Joseph stammered. "Ya Asante," his former assistant, the young intern he once mentored when his business was at its peak, was now a full-grown man, confident, polished, and clearly successful. Ya stepped out of the vehicle and gave Joseph a stunned once-over. "My God. It is you. What happened to you?" Joseph lowered his eyes. "It's a long story." "Come. Get in," Ya insisted. "Let's talk." Inside a nearby restaurant, they sat like old friends, though time and fortune had changed them both. "I thought you were dead," Ya said. "We tried to reach you. I even sent private investigators." Joseph looked up, puzzled. "Why?" Ya leaned in. "When your partners disappeared, we knew something was off. Eventually, the truth came out. They forged documents and funneled money offshore. But by then, you were gone. I wanted to fix things, but you vanished." Joseph's hands trembled slightly. "I was broken. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I had nothing." Ya sighed. "Well, now you have something. My company took over the remnants of yours. I'm the CEO of Ankoma Global Holdings. We kept your name because your reputation still carried weight." Joseph's eyes filled with tears. "Come back, Joseph. We'll find you a place in the company. I owe you my start." But Joseph shook his head. "Not yet. I need to finish something first." Ya frowned. "Finish what?" Joseph smiled faintly. "A promise. I'll come to you, but not until I've repaid a debt." Ya didn't understand, but he respected it. He gave Joseph a business card and an envelope with some cash. "Anytime you're ready." That night, Joseph returned to the garage with a strange spark in his eyes. Kwame noticed it immediately. "You all right?" he asked. Joseph simply nodded. "Something good happened." He didn't explain more, only helped fix a busted radiator in silence. But his hands moved with purpose, as if he was preparing for something. Meanwhile, across the street, Adjei was busy yelling at a delivery man. His wine business had hit a rough patch, import costs had risen, and his loan repayments were overdue. He glanced at Kwame's garage and chuckled bitterly. "Still playing with bolts and beggars," he murmured. But the wind was shifting. And soon, the man he had mocked would be standing beside a destiny too big for him to comprehend. Kwame was fixing a tricycle engine when Joseph entered the garage with something unusual, energy. He moved swiftly, almost humming, as he cleaned and organized tools. Kwame watched him, eyebrows raised. "You sure you didn't win the lottery?" he teased. Joseph chuckled. "Something better." He didn't elaborate, and Kwame didn't press. Instead, he handed Joseph a screwdriver. "Hold this steady." As they worked side by side, customers started trickling in. Small jobs, but more than usual. A woman with a faulty battery. A motorbike courier with a loose chain. Even a trotro driver needing a quick tune-up. Kwame felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. Later, as they sat on crates sipping ginger tea, Joseph looked at him and said, "What would you do if you had a bigger shop?" Kwame laughed. Dreaming now. I'm serious. Kwame took a deep breath. I'd hire boys from the street, teach them skills. Buy better tools. Maybe even set up a training center. Joseph nodded slowly. You'd help people. Kwame shrugged. I was helped once too. My uncle taught me this trade after my father died. Joseph smiled. Then we're both standing because of someone else's kindness. From across the road, Adjei stumbled out of his house, shouting into his phone. I told you to send the payment yesterday. My container is stuck at Tima Port. He was sweating, his crisp shirt stained, and his shoes mismatched. His wine import business was crumbling, and his pride was cracking with it. Kwame watched quietly. I feel sorry for him, Joseph murmured. Kwame looked surprised. After all his insults. Joseph shrugged. Angry people are usually hurting. He just hides it with noise. Kwame considered it. Still, I can't forget how he laughed at me. Called you a stray dog. Joseph smiled. Dogs are loyal. I'll take that. They both laughed. That night, Joseph went to bed earlier than usual. But long after Kwame fell asleep, he lay awake, staring at the moonlight streaming through the wooden slats in the garage roof. He had made his decision. He would repay the debt, the one written in bread and water, in kindness and humility. The one that couldn't be measured in money alone. And it had to begin soon. The next morning, he disappeared before sunrise. Kwame found a note beside his toolbox. I'll be gone for a few days. Trust me. I'll be back. Joseph. Kwame stared at the paper for a long time, heart pounding. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had Joseph left for good? Was everything a lie? But something inside him said no. Joseph was different. Still, the silence in the garage that morning felt heavier than any engine block he'd ever lifted. Across the street, Adjei smirked through a cracked window. Finally, he said to himself, the beggar's gone. But Adjei had no idea. The storm he was about to face would come without mercy. And Joseph. Joseph was preparing the wind. 3 days passed. Kwame tried to keep his mind busy with work, but the silence in the garage was loud without Joseph. He fixed bolts and bearings with mechanical rhythm, but his heart wasn't in it. The note Joseph left still rested in his toolbox, its folds worn from being opened too many times. Each morning, Kwame looked toward the gate, hoping he'd see that familiar frail figure sweeping or mixing tea. But nothing. Adjei, on the other hand, was growing bolder in his taunts. See, I told you. He laughed from across the street. Your beggar friend vanished. Used your bread to gather strength and run away. Kwame didn't respond. But doubt began to grow like weeds in his chest. He wanted to believe Joseph meant what he said, but people had disappeared from his life before. His father, his brother, even old customers who owed him. Why would Joseph be different? Then, on the fourth morning, just before dawn, Kwame heard the deep hum of a powerful engine. Not the rickety sounds he was used to, but something rich and polished. He rushed outside. A glossy black Mercedes-Benz with tinted windows slowed and parked directly in front of his garage. Kwame froze. The driver stepped out first, a young man in uniform. Then the rear door opened. Joseph emerged. But this was not the Joseph he knew. No ragged clothes. No dust on his skin. He wore a tailored navy blue suit, polished brown shoes, and a wristwatch that gleamed in the morning light. He stood taller, straighter, like a man who had found himself again. Joseph. Kwame gasped. Joseph smiled. Told you I'd be back. Kwame stepped forward, unsure whether to shake his hand or hug him. Joseph hugged him first, tight and sincere. What is this? Kwame asked, bewildered. Joseph turned and gestured toward the car. Let me introduce you to my world. Behind him, another car pulled up, this one filled with boxes and tools. Then a third car, with 3 well-dressed men who introduced themselves as Joseph's associates. I've secured funding, Joseph said. And I bought the lot next to yours. We're going to expand the garage, turn it into a modern auto center. You'll run it. Kwame blinked. Me? Yes, you, Joseph said firmly. This is your kindness returning with interest. Tears welled in Kwame's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. Why me, Joseph? Because when I had nothing, you gave me dignity. You didn't know who I was, yet you fed me. Let me repay you. Just then, Adjei stormed out of his gate in a worn-out vest, shocked by the sudden entourage. He stared at Joseph in disbelief. Wait, is that? Joseph turned slowly. Their eyes met. Adjei's face crumbled. For the first time, He was the one who had nothing to say. The winds had changed. And this time, they were blowing in Kwame's favor. Adjei stood rooted to the spot, eyes wide, lips parted as if words were caught midair. The once homeless man he'd mocked, called a stray dog, a waste of skin, was now stepping out of a luxury car like a man born for it. He tried to laugh, but it came out dry. So, you were rich all along? Joseph looked at him calmly. No. I lost everything once. But now I'm back. Adjei's eyes flicked to the boxes and men setting up next door. What's all this? Kwame stepped forward. We're expanding. This garage is about to become something bigger. Adjei scoffed, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Humph. You two think opening a fancy garage will change anything? You'll fail. I've seen it before. Joseph tilted his head. And your business, Adjei? How's it going? The question hit like a stone. Adjei's wine import venture was gasping for air. With unpaid taxes, rising debts, and angry suppliers calling day and night, he had even started considering selling his car. He straightened. We're undergoing restructuring. Joseph said nothing more. He turned back to Kwame. I'll be gone again for a few days to finalize paperwork, but the men here will begin the construction. I want you to oversee it. Kwame still couldn't believe what was happening. It all felt like a dream. Joseph smiled. And while you're at it, I want you to pick 3 boys from the community who need a second chance. We'll train them. Kwame nodded, heart swelling. By afternoon, the new lot beside the garage was alive with workers, unloading materials, leveling the ground, and marking the space for what would become a state-of-the-art auto center. Adjei watched from his compound like a man staring at a storm on the horizon. And the thunder was real. His landlord showed up that evening, demanding payment. His wife called from Kumasi, asking about school fees he hadn't paid in months. And the bank had frozen his business account over unpaid loans. He was cracking, slowly. Meanwhile, word spread through the neighborhood. Did you hear? Kwame's garage is turning into a company. The beggar? He's the one funding it. Neighbors who once avoided Kwame's shop now came offering help, praise, and cheap smiles. But Kwame hadn't forgotten who stood by him in silence, only Joseph. That night, as the stars blinked above the half-built workshop, Kwame sat on a bench and whispered a silent prayer of thanks. Behind closed doors, Adjei, overwhelmed by calls and bills, slammed his phone down and screamed into a pillow. He had mocked a beggar. Now, he was becoming one. And fate, unforgiving and precise, was writing its lesson line by line. Adjei's living room, once a haven of imported furniture and glassy decor, had turned into a mess of unopened bills, broken electronics, and dust. The air reeked of stale wine and desperation. He paced, phone glued to his ear, calling supplier after supplier. But no one answered, or worse, they answered only to say the same thing. No credit. Pay your balance. His bank account was nearly empty. His Mercedes had been repossessed. Even the house he bragged about was on the brink of repossession. The landlord had handed him a final warning notice. And all the while, from his window, he could see Kwame's garage transforming, scaffolds rising, new tools arriving, young boys being trained, wearing matching blue overalls with a sleek white logo that read, JK Auto Center. J for Joseph. K for Kwame. It burned Adjei's eyes. He hadn't slept properly in days. He would sit by the window late into the night, staring at the progress of the garage as though it were a monster growing to devour him. One morning, unable to bear the humiliation anymore, he swallowed his pride and crossed the road. Kwame was on site, guiding a young trainee through an oil change. Adjei cleared his throat. Kwame. Kwame looked up, surprised but composed. Adjei. There was a long pause. I need help, Adjei said quietly. Things are not going well for me. The business is gone. I've lost everything. Kwame stood still, wiping his hands slowly with a cloth. I see. Adjei looked down. I mocked you. I know. I was wrong. I was proud. Kwame didn't respond immediately. He looked over at the shiny new structure next door, then back at the man who once called him a fool. I remember, he said finally. You mocked me when I shared my food. Laughed when I gave shelter. Called me stupid for trusting someone in need. I did, Adjei said, almost in a whisper. But now, I'm the one in need. A heavy silence passed between them. Then Kwame asked, Do you remember what Joseph used to say? Adjei frowned. He said, You never know whose shoes you'll end up in. Looks like life has a way of teaching. Adjei nodded, ashamed. Kwame sighed. We're hiring. Adjei blinked. What? You said you need help. We'll be needing someone in the parts store. You're educated. I'll speak to Joseph. But it's honest work. Adjei opened his mouth to argue, to say he was above that, but he couldn't. Not anymore. He nodded slowly. Thank you. Kwame gave a faint smile. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even you. As Adjei walked back across the street, shoulders heavy but heart strangely lighter, he realized something for the first time in years. Pride doesn't feed you. Humility might. And the beggar he once mocked? He was now the man setting his table. Adjei's first day at JK Auto Center was humbling. Gone were the silk shirts and gold wristwatches. Dressed in the standard blue uniform, he stood behind the counter of the parts store, logging deliveries and organizing shelves. Customers didn't recognize him at first, at least, not the proud Adjei they remembered. Some chuckled. Others whispered. But Kwame never treated him differently. You do your job, and you'll earn respect again, Kwame said. Just like everyone else here. Adjei nodded and got to work. Meanwhile, JK Auto Center flourished. With Joseph's backing and Kwame's mechanical brilliance, the center gained a reputation far beyond their neighborhood. Newspapers started publishing short articles about the mechanic and the beggar who built an empire. Clients came from across the city. And every week, Joseph returned to check progress, always with new ideas. One afternoon, as the staff gathered for a team meeting under the shaded lot, Joseph stood in front of them with a beaming smile. We started with nothing, he began. Just a loaf of bread and a place to sleep. The workers nodded, they all knew the story by now. But what makes this place special, he continued, is not just the engines we fix, it's the people we raise. This center is for second chances. He turned to Adjei. Even for those who once laughed at us. Adjei lowered his eyes, ashamed, but also grateful. Kwame stepped forward. This center will soon begin hosting free monthly workshops for unemployed youth. We'll train them, give them purpose. Cheers broke out. Later that evening, Joseph invited Kwame to a quiet dinner in a private restaurant in town. For the first time, Kwame wasn't in greasy clothes, but a crisp shirt Joseph had bought him. Over spicy jollof rice and grilled tilapia, Joseph leaned forward. Kwame, he said, there's something else. I want you to become a partner. Kwame nearly choked. What? I've drawn up the papers. 50-50 ownership. You're not just running this center, you helped build it. You gave it heart. I brought money, yes, but you brought integrity. Kwame stared at him. Joseph, I only gave you food and a place to sleep. And I never forgot it, Joseph said. You changed my life, Kwame. Let me change yours permanently. Kwame's eyes welled up. Thank you. They clinked glasses and smiled. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to see a new signboard erected above the garage. JK Auto Center, where every hand matters. Children pointed. Adults murmured. Adjei stood at the gate, staring at the sign with a quiet, thoughtful smile. Everything had come full circle. The beggar had become a savior. The mechanic had become a boss. And the proud neighbor? He had finally found his place, not above, not below, but beside the very people he once mocked. News of JK Auto Center's success spread far beyond the community. Local radio stations mentioned it during business segments, and a popular blogger even posted a video tour, praising the center for employing ex-convicts, street youth, and school dropouts. But while the public celebrated, something deeper stirred within the neighborhood, a sense of reflection. Elderly women sitting at kiosks began telling the story of Kwame and Joseph to young boys who loitered with idle hands. You see that man there, one woman said, pointing at Kwame guiding an apprentice. He gave bread to a stranger. Now look. Children watched with wide eyes. They weren't just seeing a mechanic, they were witnessing what kindness could become. Meanwhile, Joseph took a quieter role in the center. He no longer wore suits every day. Sometimes, he arrived in jeans, rolled up his sleeves, and sat with the boys, telling stories of failure, pain, and rebuilding. One afternoon, a former classmate of Joseph's drove in with a broken-down Range Rover. When he recognized Joseph, he did a double take. Joseph, is that you? Joseph grinned. It's me. But, you're working at a garage? Joseph placed a hand on the man's shoulder. No, I'm building futures. The man was speechless. Inside the center, Adjei was slowly earning the respect he once demanded. He worked hard, never late, and apologized when he made mistakes. He even offered business advice from his import experience, helping improve inventory tracking. One day, as they took a break under the mango tree behind the workshop, he turned to Kwame. "I was wrong about everything," Adjei admitted. "All those years, I thought power came from money. I never understood that it really comes from people." Kwame nodded. "Took me years to learn that too." They both laughed, a genuine laugh. The kind that comes from healing. Later that week, Joseph held a community outreach event. Tables were set up outside JK Auto Center, giving out free oil changes to drivers, handing out secondhand clothes to the poor, and offering hot meals to beggars, just like the one he once was. As Joseph handed a loaf of bread to a shaking, barefoot man, he paused. He looked the man in the eyes. That same haunted look. That same shame. He smiled. "It gets better," Joseph whispered. "I promise." The man nodded faintly. From across the street, an older woman watching the event wiped a tear from her cheek. "This world," she whispered, "would be different if more people had hearts like theirs." Kwame stood beside Joseph as the sun dipped low. "You really came back strong," Kwame said. Joseph placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Because someone believed in me when I was nothing." As the sky turned orange and gold, it was clear. The seeds of kindness, once planted in darkness, were now blooming in full daylight. And the story, their story, wasn't done yet. It had been 1 year since the opening of JK Auto Center, and the celebration was nothing short of grand. A large white tent stood in front of the now thriving workshop. Guests filled the seats, journalists, business owners, pastors, teachers, and neighbors who had watched the transformation unfold before their eyes. Even a representative from the mayor's office arrived to present a plaque. Kwame adjusted his new tailored suit, still feeling awkward in it. Joseph grinned beside him, looking completely at home as he chatted with guests and shook hands. A stage had been set up, and soon, the master of ceremonies called Joseph and Kwame forward. As the two men stood side by side, the crowd erupted in applause. Joseph took the microphone first. "I once had everything, and lost it. And when I had nothing, this man, gave me bread, a mat, and a roof." He turned to Kwame, voice steady. "You gave me dignity. And with that, I found my way back." The crowd clapped. Kwame stepped forward next, clearing his throat. "I only did what I believed was right. I didn't help Joseph because I thought he would repay me. I helped him because I had once needed help too." He paused. "I've learned that you don't need to be rich to be kind. You just need to care." As he finished, the mayor's rep stepped forward and presented a plaque that read, "JK Auto Center, for uplifting the community through kindness and second chances." Photographers snapped pictures as the audience rose for a standing ovation. From the back row, Adjei watched quietly. He clapped slowly, sincerely. He no longer sought the spotlight. Humility had carved a new man from the ruins of his pride. Later, as the music played and food was served, Joseph walked away from the crowd to the side of the building where he used to sleep under a broken ceiling. He stood there in silence. Kwame joined him, holding 2 bottles of malt. He handed one to Joseph. "Still remember the night you arrived?" Joseph chuckled. "How could I forget? I almost walked away when you offered bread. I didn't think I was worth it." Kwame smiled. "We never know what a small act can do." They clinked their bottles together. "To survival," Joseph said. Kwame nodded. "To friendship." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden shadows over the center, 2 men stood together, one who had given, the other who had risen, both now lifted by the power of compassion. Across the street, Adjei locked his small new shop, a parts kiosk Joseph had quietly helped him start. He looked at JK Auto Center and smiled. No envy. Just peace. In that moment, it was clear. Kindness is a seed that never dies. It may take time. It may grow in silence. But when it blooms, it changes everything. Hope you learnt something from this story. If this story touches you, then let's see your comment. Moral lessons learnt. Kindness costs little but yields much. Helping someone in need, even with something as simple as bread, can have ripple effects far beyond imagination. Kwame's small act of kindness became the foundation of his future success. Never underestimate anyone based on their situation. Joseph, once a homeless man, turned out to be a successful businessman in hiding. This teaches us not to judge people by their present condition. You never know who they truly are or who they may become. Pride comes before a fall. Adjei's arrogance and mockery of others blinded him to his own weaknesses. His downfall was a direct result of his pride and lack of compassion. Humility can open new doors. When Adjei finally humbled himself and asked for help, he was given a second chance. This shows that admitting one's faults and embracing humility can lead to redemption. Every act of goodness will be remembered. Joseph never forgot Kwame's generosity, even when he rose again. Good deeds often come back to bless the giver, sometimes in unexpected ways. True wealth lies in character, not possessions. Kwame was poor in money but rich in heart. His integrity, compassion, and selflessness made him more valuable than any material riches. Everyone deserves a second chance. Joseph was broken and forgotten, yet someone gave him a second chance, and he made the most of it. Likewise, Adjei was given a fresh start despite his past mistakes. Invest in people, not just profits. Kwame's vision to train others and lift youth from the streets shows that real success involves empowering others, not just gaining wealth. Don't let society's opinions guide your morals. Kwame was mocked for helping Joseph, but he followed his heart. This shows the importance of doing what's right, even when it's unpopular. What you sow, you will eventually reap. Kwame sowed kindness and compassion. He reaped honor and success. Adjei sowed pride and scorn. He reaped loss and regret. Life often reflects what we put into it.